Do this about the only guest we can have at our Seder this year. I've sent you separately the sheets. I'll try and screen share some of the sources so it'll be easier for you to see if I can figure out how to do that. So on the first page of your sources, you'll see that we have two pictures of Eliyahu. Here I'm showing you the top one. That's a picture by Dore of the zealous Elijah the prophet. Very strong looking character. And if we look down on the bottom half of the page, we see the Eliyahu that we all know and love, the one that reminds me of Santa Claus, and the sweet old man who is helping the lady who's overwhelmed with all the things that she has to do. So they're both valid representations of Eliyahu, and today hopefully we'll get to know both Eliyahus and how they transformed, how one transformed into the other, and more importantly, why he comes to our Seder and how he takes part in our Seder. Okay, so we've all heard a version of this kind of a story. This one's an old story from Baghdad. Many years ago, there was a wise man who lived in Baghdad, and he was God-fearing, and he was learned, and a Baal Tzedakah, and a Gomel Chasadim, and everyone in the city honored the man and called him a tzaddik. And his wife was a child, of course, and they had one son. And they raised him to a life of Torah and mitzvot, and when he was at an appropriate age, they married him off and to a very appropriate woman. And unfortunately, the son had a problem. The couple was barren. And after a few years, it became clear that nothing was happening, and they were very sad. One year, it was Pesach time. On the night of the Seder, the son and the wife were sitting at the table, reading the Haggadah, and the husband was sensitive to the fact that the wife was very sad, that there was nobody to ask the Manishkana. And he kept trying to cheer her up and say, it's okay, we're going to be okay, it's going to happen eventually, Hashem won't forget us. But suddenly, there was a knock at the door. And in the doorway, they saw an old man. Of course, they immediately invited him to share in their Seder, and he joined them in saying the Haggadah, and they did the best Hachnatzat Orachim you could imagine, treating him in the best way possible, with every honor. But as he turned to leave at the end of the evening, he turned to them and he said, I asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu that next year on Leila Pesach, your table will be without Seder. And they were shocked. This man that they had worked so hard to bring into their home had cursed them. And they felt he was being very ungrateful, and they were angry. And of course, they were very well trained, and they didn't say anything to him. And they knew they had to do, to honor their elders. This was an older man, so they let him leave, but they were very upset. A month later, the wife discovers that she's pregnant. And 4 months before Pesach, she gives birth to 3 months actually, I guess. She gives birth to a boy. And of course, there was no words to describe how happy the couple was. And of course, they had completely forgotten about the rude old man by now. They sit down at the Seder, holding the baby on their lap. The baby is so cute, and everybody is playing with the baby, and the baby reaches out and pulls on the tablecloth and knocks over the wine glasses and makes a plate fall to the floor. But the parents don't care. They're so happy and so in love with this baby and so happy with the balagan that's on their table. And then I knock at the door. And in the doorway is the old man. And the couple recognize the man. And they say, oh, there he is, the same man from next year. And then they turn around and they look at their table which is truly without Seder at all, and they understand that the curse that they had received the previous year was really a bracha. and that they were the fools for not understanding. Immediately, of course, they kissed the hands of their welcome guest and invited him in and asked for his forgiveness because they had such thoughts about him. And of course, he said, "I've forgiven you," and gave many brachot to the baby that he should grow up and do mitzvot and everything. And of course, that guest was none other than Eliyahu Hanavi. Of course, there's hundreds of stories like this that center around the theme of Eliyahu Hanavi as some kind of magical guest at the Seder, and this story particularly combines the Eliyahu at the Seder with Eliyahu visiting the barren, which is another theme in a lot of the Eliyahu stories. And a third theme that we see in many Eliyahu stories is that of a puzzle or some kind of riddle that he leaves, something that's not really understood and only becomes clear as the story develops. He usually appears as an old man like he does here, but sometimes he's in a disguise and he's unrecognizable. But somehow we find that Eliyahu has become associated with the Seder night. And we have to ask ourselves why. So let's start chronologically and go through with the earliest stories of Eliyahu. Eliyahu's role in the Tanakh is an important one. Sometimes all the folklore about him dominates over our knowledge of him in the Tanakh, and we forget about who he was in the Tanakh. But really, in order to understand who Eliyahu is, you have to understand the basis in the Tanakh. He was a Navi in the time of the king Achav, who was Melech over Mamlechet Yisrael, and he stood up very strongly to Achav. We have to understand what the situation was in his time. Achav was a big supporter of idolatry. His wife killed all the Nevi'im of Hashem, and it was a patron of Baal worship. And in punishment for what was going on with Achav and Izebel, Eliyahu probably brought down a 3-year and at the end of these 3 years, he publicly challenged the priests of Baal in a contest to prove which religion was true. He, of course, representing Hashem, and they representing Baal. And all of this is in the Psukim in your first source. You're on the page. It's quite a ceremony what happens here. It's a grand presentation in Eliyahu style. He takes 12 stones to represent the tribes, and he builds this altar, and he soaks the whole altar and all the wood on it in water to make it even harder for it to catch fire. And then he calls down. Here, let's read the psukim from the place where it's underlined. Vayomer Hashem Elokei Avraham Yitzchak v'Yisrael Hayom Yivada Ki Ata Elokim b'Yisrael. He makes this pronunciation: God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yisrael. Today will become known that you are the God of Israel. V'ani Avdecha, and I am your servant. Uvidvarcha asiti et kol achorim, and et kol hadvarim ha'ela. And because and at your word I have done all of these things. Aneni Hashem Aneni. Answer me, God, so that the nation will know. Okay, so what happens? And then after all of this is after he gave an opportunity to the prophets of Baal to call down, and obviously nothing happened. And it was a big. They made a big scene, and nothing happened. And then he calls down the Tipol Eish Hashem, and God's fire comes directly down, eats up everything that's on the Mizbeach and the Mizbeach itself, even though it's soaked in water. And he creates this huge scene, V'yirat kol ha'am, and all the people see, V'yiflu pneihem, and they bow down, and they say, Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim, and they acknowledge God. And so the people take this as a sign, and they slay all the prophets of Baal, and rain begins to fall, ending the drought. And Eliyahu has to flee because Izebel is not too happy about what he's done with all of her prophets. and he runs into the desert. And he runs after 40 days of walking. Obviously, we always talk about how numbers are symbolic, 40 days in the desert. We all know what that's indicating. And he reaches, where does he reach? He reaches Har Chorev. What is Har Chorev? Har Chorev is another name for Har Sinai. So again, the symbolism here is very clear. And there, God confronts him for what he's done. Now, until now, it seems like a really good thing that he did. He got rid of the idolatry, and he seems to have brought the people around to saying Hashem Hu Elokim, choosing God over the Baal. But what happens when he gets to Har Chorev? He reaches here in Pasuk says, he comes to a cave in the mountain, and he sleeps there. And God appears to him, and God says to him, he doesn't say, Yay, Eliyahu, that was great what you did. He says, what are you doing here, Eliyahu? And what is Eliyahu's answer? He doesn't defend Israel. What does he say? I was zealous for God, right? And why? Because Bnei Israel Bnei Israel left your covenant. They destroyed all your altars and killed all your prophets. And I was left alone, and they wanted to kill me. A little bit egocentric, his statement, right? And God wants to teach him a lesson. So what does he say? He says, Bahar Hashem. He tells him to come out of the little cave that he's hiding in and stand before God. Hashem over, and God will pass by. And there's going to be this great wind, like one that can break mountains, can break rocks. Lo baruch Hashem, but God is not in that wind. And after the ruach will come an earthquake, and the earth lo baruch Hashem, but God is not in that earthquake either. And after the earthquake, there'll be fire, like one disaster after another. Lo ba'esh Hashem, but God is not in that fire. But after the fire, cold mamadzaka, a thin voice, a quiet, thin voice. So Hashem is trying to teach him a lesson, and Eliyahu goes out and sees this, and what happens? When Eliyahu hears, he covers his face with his aderet, with his cloak, and he goes out to the opening of the cave. And again, God asks him again, Ma'alecha po Eliyahu. And this time he's really saying, what have you learned from this experience? You just had a grandstanding experience, a grand presentation, just like Eliyahu did on Har Carmel. Have you learned anything? And what does he answer? Word for word what he answered the last time. Again, in the second underlined section, the exact same words. I was zealous, the people were bad, I had to run away. And what is God trying to teach you with this statement of the fire and the earthquake and the wind? He's saying, showy presentations, they're very convincing for a minute. But that's not how we make real change. If you want to make real change, it's the steady hard work of a small, quiet voice, working day in, day out. Grandstand presentation, okay, they'll say Hashem Elokim, but the next day they won't remember that feeling. Look what happened even at Ma'amar Har Sinai. Bnei Israel had such a huge experience, but right afterwards they sinned with Chet HaEgel. But Eliyahu isn't learning that lesson. And Hashem sees that he doesn't learn the lesson, and what is his response? Vayomer Hashem elav, lech shuv l'darkecha, go home. Midbar Damasek, Ubatul Mashach, Hazael Melech Alaram. He gives him some tasks. The first one is to go to make Hazael the king over Aram. That Yehu ben Nimshit bin Shach Melech Israel. Make Yehu now the king over Israel. And now that your task is done, now go choose your successor. Your job is over. You have not learned your lesson, and you're no longer fit to lead my people. So after this huge grandstanding and 3 years of working with Ahav or against Ahav, or trying to convince Ahav to get the idolatry out of Am Yisrael, Eliyahu is rejected by God and sent home and sent to find his replacement. We see in source 3, let me get down to your page. Eliyahu tavak kvod ha'av. What was the problem that God saw? Eliyahu, he was looking for the honor of the father. Who's the father? God. V'lo kvod haben, and not the honor of the child. That's Israel. The job of the Navi is to defend the people. He's defending God. That's the psukim that we saw. I was zealous for God. And what did God answer? Hashem sends him home. And choose your successor. God is saying, I do not want your prophecy anymore. So God's not happy. God's sending Eliyahu home. And what else is he doing? Look in source 4, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Amar la Kodesh Baruch Hu Le'olam ata mekaneh hayecha she'ein Yisrael osim brit milah ad she'ata ro'eh be'einecha. You came out and you said that that Bnei Israel have left the covenant. So from now on, Israel will not make a brit milah until you see it. I'm going to prove to you that you were wrong. I'm going to prove to you that they have not left the covenant. And from this, the Chachamim determined that we make a special chair at the Brit, that Eliyahu should sit there, because he is now called the Malach HaBrit, the angel of the Brit. So God is again trying to teach Eliyahu a lesson. And throughout the generations, he will have to go to every single Brit to see that Am Yisrael, for thousands of years after his time, is still keeping the covenant and still making the Brit Milah. Another example given in Orot HaKodesh in verse 5, Eliyahu Yoshev b'chol motzei Shabbat tachat Eitz HaChaim. What is Eliyahu's job? He has to sit under the Eitz HaChaim every Saturday night. The Kotev Zchuyotehem Yisrael, and he writes down every good deed that all of Am Yisrael did that week. Imagine there, it's like the teacher sending you home to write 100 times, I will not say bad things about Am Yisrael. So he gets put under the tree of the Eitz HaChaim, and he has to write down every good thing that Am Yisrael does that year. To prove to him, that every person, to prove to him that every person, there's no end of a holy light in every single one of us, even even the simplest or the emptiest of Israel, the world is dependent upon them, on their good action. Okay, so God's not happy with Eliyahu's actions in Tanakh, and we see that he's given this punishment, but it's not all bad. First of all, we see something very unique about Eliyahu. One is that Eliyahu never died. We need in the Psukim in Pasuk 6, in source 6, that as we all know, he tells Elisha that he's going to die, and they're walking along in Pasuk Yudalef, Hema holchim haloch v'daber. They're walking along and talking as he's parting from Elisha. And a chariot of fire with horses of fire come between them, and Eliyahu gets on and rises up the heavens in a storm of fire. And the Gemara says on that in verse 7, Amar le Reish Lakish le Rabbi Yochanan Eliyahu chayhu. Reish Lakish says Eliyahu never died. He went up to Shemayim without dying. And in this place, he becomes some kind of unifying force between our world and the world to come. He crosses boundaries that other people can't cross. And Rabbi Lublin says that that really this whole concept of Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh is an artificial boundary. They're really all one God, one world of God. And so the one Olam Hazeh is the one that's apparent to the eye, and the one that's Olam Haba is the hidden one. And Eliyahu was able to cross between them. Not a delineation between the worlds is neither necessary nor intrinsic. Really, there should be a back and forth. And so Eliyahu has become to be known as this unifying force, both between heaven and earth, but also among people. And we see that the end, the last nivuah given to us at the end of Malachi in source 9, Hinei anochi sholech lachem et Eliyahu navi lifnei bo yom Hashem hagdol v'hanorah. He's given the role of being the one who will be mivaser the Geulah, who will inform us that the redemption is coming. And his other role here, v'hishiv leiv avot al banim v'leiv banim al avotam, is to bring the generations together, and to make peace between people. So this person who kept saying over and over, I was left alone, is now becoming not a lone person, but a person who brings people together. We also know that Eliyahu Navi is the one who solves halachic issues. You know, we say when we have an argument in the Gemara that we don't know, we say Teku, that Eliyahu Navi will come. When Eliyahu Navi comes, he's going to tell us what the answer is. Okay, so we've seen Eliyahu as a powerful prophet, like in picture number 1 on the first page. And we see that the second role is really a tikkun, a correction for the first role. So now he's become the defender of the people, because he has to compensate for the fact that he only defended God in the beginning. And we saw that why he's at the breach, because he said people had left, that the Jews had left the covenant. So now he's there to see that that there is always a covenant between us and God. And there's a connection between Brit Milah and Pesach as well. If you look in source 10, the Gaon Mivilna says, when we pour the fourth cup of the 4 cups, we open the door for Eliyahu. In order to remember that it's a night of protection. We're going to talk about that soon. And some people believe that Eliyahu Navi will come into the house then. And therefore we leave on the table a cup for Eliyahu. And what is the reason for this kos Eliyahu? Why? Because Eliyahu is the Malach HaBrit, we saw that, and he is the one who is always the witness that we do Brit Milah, and Pesach is connected to Brit Milah because you can't eat the Korban Pesach if you are uncircumcised. That's why we see in Yehoshua, in verse 11, we won't read the Psukim, but we see that when they came into Eretz Israel, the first thing they did was Brit Milah, and all the men who hadn't done Brit Milah in the desert because of the danger of the traveling, so that they can keep the Pesach. And the other connection between them, these are the only 2 mitzvot that say positive commandments where you get karet if you don't do them. Korban Pesach and Brit Milah. Okay. So we have two minhagim at the Seder that are connected to Eliyahu. One is opening the door, and the other one is the kos Eliyahu, which we saw a little bit. Now we'll get back to that. Now the question is, why do we open the door for Eliyahu? And we mentioned already the idea of Leil Shimurim. In Shmot Perek Yud Bet, he talks about the night of the Exodus. Leil Shimurim hu laHashem motziah me'eretz Mitzrayim. Hu halayla hazeh laHashem shimurim l'chol b'nei Yisrael l'dorotam. That night was a night of, we're going to say protection now for Shimurim, but we're going to see there's more than one interpretation of it. on the night that they're coming out of Mitzrayim. But the pasuk also says, "Lidorotam," that it's going to be always, that night will always be a night of protection. And we know that certain times of the year have certain qualities, so that we know that Nisan is a time of Geulah. Every year it's a time of Geulah. Hopefully this year it'll also be a time of Geulah. And Tishrei is a time of Tshuva and forgiveness. So the night of the Seder, the night of the Exodus, is a night of Shimurim, of protection. So in the Gemara, the rabbis debate what exactly this term Leil Shimurim means. In verse 13, Rabbi Yoshua Omer, B'Nisan Nigalu, B'Nisan Atidim Nigael. Rabbi Yoshua says in Nisan was the redemption, and Nisan will be the ultimate redemption. Minalan, how do we know this? Leil Shimurim, from our pasuk. Leil HaMishumar Uba Misheshet Yemei Reshit. That this evening is one of those things that God prepared back in the time of the creation of the world. There were certain things that God set aside, and this night was set aside as a night of redemption. The other interpretation is that it's a night where we are protected from dangers. And then connected to that is the reduced Kriyat Shema L'Mitah. We don't need all the protection of Kriyat Shema L'Mitah on a night of Leil Shimurim if you have that minhag. Okay, so so in source 14 in the Medrash it says, "Ma ra'alomar Leil Shimurim shebo asa gdula l'sadikim kashem she'asai l'Yisrael b'Mitzrayim ubo Mashiach ve'Eliyahu mitgalim." What does the Medrash say? This is going to be the night that the Mashiach and Eliyahu are going to be revealed to us. So why do we open the door? Says the Otar Agonim. We don't want, if Eliyahu is going to show up, let the door be open. We don't have to waste time unlocking the door. We want it to be open so as soon as he shows up, we can run out. And we'll be able to greet him. And if we put all this together and we look in the Shulchan Aruch, so the Ramah, the Ashkenazi glosses on the Shulchan Aruch actually say, the Yeshomrim, we should say the psukim of Shvo Chamatcha, which are the psukim that we say when we open the door, Kodim Lo Lanu, before we go to the rest of Hallel, which is the part that we say at the end of, after the meal, and open the door, Kedei Lizkor Shehu Leil Shimurim, ובזכות אמונה זו יבוא משיח וישפוך חמתו על המכחשים בהשם. So because of our faith that we're going to open the doors and believe that there's no danger and believe that Eliyahu is coming, so when you have faith, you know, if you believe it, it will happen. So then Mashiach will come and he will pour out his wrath, shpol chamatcha, on all the people who deny God. And the Ramah says to us, that is our minhag. So here we see an introduction of a new element, and that's the element of shpol chamatcha. Psukim that we say when we open the door for Eliyahu. And where does this custom of saying shpol chamatcha come from? Well, we know that most of the Haggadah is quite old, actually from the time of the Beit HaMikdash. It's in the Mishnah. These are all the words that we say are actually the words that they were saying in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. But there were some sections that begin to appear later on that are added in, and a lot of the add-ins happened during the Middle Ages. Shpol chamatcha is one of these add-ins. They collected psukim from Tehillim and Eicha and put them into the Haggadah at this point. Why are they there? And why did they seemingly appear out of nowhere in medieval Haggadot? So there are a few answers to that question. The later commentaries, the ones from the 17th and 18th century, see them in a much more positive light. Kind of the first part of Hallel that we get to after the Seder is the one where we say, you know, they worship idols and we worship the real God. So this kind of connects that concept, pour out your wrath on the people who aren't worshiping the right God. But that doesn't really give us any explanation for why these psukim should have suddenly been inserted in the Middle Ages. It's not very historic. It's kind of just like a nice idea. Rav Menachem Kasher, in his book Haggadah Shlema, he offers a historical solution, which I think makes a lot of sense. He says these verses were inserted during the time of the Crusades, when the Jews really were feeling that they needed a little extra help in punishing their enemies, on God pouring out his wrath on them. And they opened the door wide because they had to check before they enemies that nobody was listening at the door. And another related opinion that on the same thought of the Vilna Gaon says that these verses may have been added at the time of the blood libels, and they were terrorizing the Jews across Europe from the mid 1100s on, and a lot of these things happened around Pesach, and perhaps they were even opening the door to check that nothing had been planted on their houses, because that was something that happened. They would put blood, they would put all kinds of things to then accuse the Jews in a blood libel. So all of these historical reasons, I think, help to answer another question about Hamadcha. In most Ashkenazi Haggadot, you'll see there are 4 verses. That's standard that we say today. But if you look in ancient Haggadot from the time of the Middle Ages, at first you see 2 psukim, because that was the introduction of the idea, but there are some places where there are 17 psukim about God pouring out his anger. And I guess it would probably be in relation to the severity of the situation that the people were in, how if things were really not so terrible, you could say 2 psukim of Shkoch HaMatzah. If things were really horrible, maybe you said 17. In any case, all of these were rather late additions to the text of Haggadah, and as a result of the situation in medieval Europe. But the idea of opening the door, okay, that's the Shkoch HaMatzah. The idea of opening the door, it goes way before that. If we look in source 18, and this is a source that we learned last year in class, Amar le Rava le Rav from Bar Papa, source 18. They're learning about Rav Huna. Rava wants to learn from Rav from Bar Papa, who was a student of Rav Huna's, what wonderful midot Rav Huna had. And he gives him a list of all these different things that Rav Huna did. You have a karet rifta, and this is towards the end of the list. When he would sit down to eat, have a patach levabe, he would open the gate of his house, ve'amar, and he would say, whoever needs something, come in to eat. Which sounds remarkably like what we say at the beginning of our Seder. So what we say comes from this minhag that Rava had, which was a very that Rav Huna had, which was a very generous thing to do. That every time he sat down, he opened his gate. Rava's response to this, if you remember when we learned it, I can do all the things that Rav Huna did on that long list, which we didn't see. Lebar miha, except this one, below matzina lemeva. This one I can't do. Mishum de nefishe bnei chayla de mechoza, because there's a lot of soldiers in Mechoza, the city I live in. If I open the door, I'll be overrun by all the people who want to eat my food. So I can't do that one. But obviously, this was considered a good midah of people, that if you had food, you would open your door and ask if there was anyone out on the street who didn't have food. But we don't actually do it that way now, right? It would make a lot of sense, because when we sit down and say kol dichpin yetei v'yechol, nobody hears us. And what's the point of that? Where that it seems like a very not honest way of inviting people in. It's like, calling someone to invite them for Shabbos because they're going away, so you get points for inviting them, but you don't actually have to have them over. So here, we invite people with the door closed, and the only people who hear us are the people who already are at our table. So the answer really goes back to the concept of Leil Shimurim. If we're really safe, we can open the door and we can invite people. But when life is dangerous, let's not be stupid. And yes, it's a Leil Shimurim. But if we look in source 21, source 20, the Magen Avraham, prominent halachic or Ashkenazic halachic source, where it is prevalent to find danger, we don't rely on a miracle, and that I think applies very much in our time. We don't go out of our house because we don't want to put ourselves in danger. So also in this case, if we know that we're living in a place where there are blood libels and there are pogroms, we don't open our door. And even the Mishnah Berurah says that even though we know that the Seder is supposed to be done with red wine, and that the red wine is a very important quality, and partly because it's like the blood of the Jews in Mitzrayim. But then the Mishnah Berurah says, but in places where the goyim do blood libels, nimna'im milikach yain adom. We do not take red wine. Use white wine, so nobody can accuse you of using blood in your wine. So again, we're taking a halachic consideration, and we're saying step back and make sure you protect yourself. So why do we open the door later in the Seder? Okay, so we saw that one opinion was that the Shol Chamatcha was placed after the meal and before the second part of Hallel, because the second part of Hallel talks about the Goyim. We say, Lo lanu Hashem, lo lanu ki l'shimcha ten kavod l'chastecha l'amitecha, lama yomu hagoyim ayena Elohehem, ve'Eloheinu b'shamayim. We're contrasting between their gods and our gods. Atzabeim kesef v'zahav, Masei de Adam, their gods are made of silver and gold and are made by man. They have a mouth and they don't speak. They have eyes and they don't see, ears and they don't hear. And as opposed to our God. So this idea of Shol Chamatcha does tie in here, like we said. But if we look at the Seder itself is naturally divided into two parts: the part before the meal and the part after the meal. In the first half, we talk about the redemption from Egypt, and we have the first two paragraphs of the Hallel, which talk about there. Then we take a break, we eat, and then in the second half, we no longer deal with the story of Egypt at all anymore. And now we're talking about the future. So therefore, it makes sense at that point, when we're talking about the future redemption, to open the door and say, Eliyahu, the Mivasir, time to come now, at the time of the future redemption. And so it's kind of like the crescendo of the Seder, where we're getting to the point of it. The point is to remember the past, but to move into the future. And that is the changing point between our obsessing about the past with Egypt and our thinking towards the future of the future redemption. And we can't lose, as much as we are trying very seriously to relive our experience in Egypt. Our ultimate goal is our redemption. Okay, so we saw that we can open the door on the night of Pesach because it's Leil Shimurim, and there are two explanations of that it's a night of special protection and it's a night destined for redemption. And we open the door and show our faith that we're ready for Eliyahu to come and tell us that Mashiach's on the way. And we leave our doors open with no fear, in theory, so that the court can join us, which doesn't really have anything to do with Eliyahu. But what about the Kos Eliyahu? Let's get back to the Kos Eliyahu. Where does this come from? There are a lot of minhagim connected to Kos Eliyahu. In some traditions, everyone pours, in order to form the Kos Eliyahu, everyone pours a little bit of their cup into the Kos Eliyahu, which is symbolized as a everybody's doing their part from the bottom, from the grassroots, bring the redemption. Everybody gives a little Eliyahu to bring Eliyahu. In Hasidic traditions, it's the opposite. Everyone. Who wouldn't want Shirayim from Eliyahu and Navi? I mean, if we bring Shirayim from the Rebbe, who wouldn't want Shirayim from Eliyahu and Navi? In other traditions, at the end of the Seder, you cover the Kos Eliyahu and you save it and you make Kiddush on it the next day. Okay, so in order to understand the source of the Kos Eliyahu, we're going to have to go to a separated halachic discussion. If we look at source 23, we see the classic Mishnah, Arbe Ptachim. A person has to have enough money for 4 cups of wine, even if he has to take it from charity. And if we continue in that, the 10th parak of Tachim, which we've learned in class, we see there the progression of the Seder. And in verse 24, Mazgulo Koshlishi, they poured the third cup for him. The Barech Mizano, he makes Birkat Hamazon. And Revi'i Gomer Alav et Halel. Every cup of wine has its own purpose. So the third one is the one that you make Birkat Hamazon, and the fourth one is the one that you finish the Halel on. Va'omer Alav Birkat Hashir. Okay, so you're allowed to drink between the first and second and third cup, not the third and fourth. It's not part of our thing, just a practical information. Okay, now what happens? That's the Mishnah. Now, what's going to happen in the Gemara with this Mishnah, which talks about the fourth cup that we make we say the second half of Hallel on? Okay, so the Gemara says in source 25, Tanu Rabbanan, Revi'i Gomer Alav et Halel, Va'omer Halel Hagadol Divrei Rabbi Tarfon. Okay, and it repeats a braita with the same idea that the fourth cup is for finishing the Halel, and then we say the Halel Hagadol, the one that's Kilo Olam Chasto, and that's according to Rabbi Tarfon. Now, Tosfot there, suddenly we see something a little bit different. Revi'i Omer Alav Halel Gadol, Revi'i Garsinan Velo Garsinan Chamishi. Tosfot comes out with a statement. He says this should be read as the fourth cup and not the fifth cup. What's up with that? Why would we think to read the fifth cup? But obviously there was a version of the text out there that said the fifth cup there. But Tosfot is very opposed to the fifth cup, and he says, he says, why would we talk about a fifth cup? There are four according to the Mishnah, and no fifth. So the Tosfot is fighting against something. We don't know what he's fighting against. There seems to be someone out there who's saying there's a fifth. If we look in the Riv, we see in source 27, Tana Rabbanan, Chamishi Omer Alav Halel Hagadol Divrei Rabbi Tarfon. In the version that the Riv has, that braita that we saw, Revi'i Gomer Alav et Halel, Omer Halel Hagadol, is split into two parts. And there, the fourth cup you say finish the Halel, and the fifth cup you say the Halel Hagadol, according to Rabbi Tarfon, in the version that the Riv has. So the Tosfot and similarly Rashi seem to be cut to cover up that version of the fifth cup. But we do know that in the time of the Gaonim, the version with the fifth cup was a prevalent version. And there's much discussion about what this fifth cup was and how serious the requirement is to drink it. And there are many Gaonic sources which quote the Kos Chamishi, the fifth cup version. Even the Rambam, if we look in the Rambam, brings it up in the Mishnah Torah. V'achar kach notel yadav. Okay, so he washes his hands, and Mivarech Birkat Hamazon, and he eats. That's talking about Mayim Achronim, and Mivarech Birkat Hamazon al Kos Shlishi Shotehu, and he makes Birkat Hamazon on the third cup and drinks it. V'achar kach mozed Kos Revi'i, and then he pours the fourth cup. V'gomer alav et Halel, and then he finishes the Halel. V'omer alav Birkat Hashir. V'yalucha Hashem kol ma'asecha, u'mivarech borei pri hagafen, ve'eno to'em achar kach klum, kol halayla chutz min hamayim. After the fourth cup, you don't need anything, you only have water. The yesh lo, and now listen to what the Rambam says, yesh lo limzog kos chamishi, you should pour a fifth cup, v'lomar alav halel hagadol, and say the halel hagadol, like the Rabbi Tarfon version of the braita of the Rabbi Tarfon, the version of the Rabbi Tarfon braita, V'hu mehodu Hashem kitov ad al naharot Bavel. V'kol ze eno chova kmo arba'a kosot. This cup is not a requirement like the other four cups, but he does say to pour it. V'yesho l'gmor halel b'chol makom sheyirtzeh afal pi she'eno makom su'ta. And he can leave the table at that point and say halel wherever he wants. But notice that he does bring up the fifth cup, but he says it's an optional fifth cup. But he doesn't discount it the way the Tosfot does. Okay, so what does all of this have to do with Eliyahu? Because it seems to be just a halachic discussion. Do we have four cups? Do we have five cups? Is the fifth cup an obligation? Is the fifth cup optional? And the fact is that we don't have a resolution of this. So remember, we go back, we said that halachic discussions that have no resolution are meant to be resolved by Eliyahu. If you look in source 30, the Pri Megadim explains what the word teku in the Gemara means. Teku we use in modern Hebrew as a tie, like in a sports game. If it's a tie, it's a teku. But it comes from the Gemara, and it's an Aramaic word, we think. We're not sure. The Pri Megadim gives three explanations for where the word teku comes from. One is from the word tik, like it's sealed, like we don't have an answer, it stays the way it is, unanswered. It could be the Aramaic abbreviation for the Aramaic heikai, like let it stand. We don't know what to do with it, so we're going to leave it. Or it's an acronym for Tishbi Yitaretz Kushiot Beba'ayot. Tishbi, who's Eliyahu, will answer difficulties and questions. In other words, okay, we don't know. We'll put it aside. Eliyahu comes, we're going to have a whole list of things, and he's going to say, okay, this one yes, this one no, this one 5, this one 4, and he's going to solve all our problems for us. The Rav Kasher in his Haggadah has a whole article on Kos Chamishi, and in source 29 he writes, "Yesh laha'ir al zeh ma shemebuar b'sifrei achronim, ta'am shekorim oto shel Eliyahu, Kos shel Eliyahu." Why is this cup that we put on the table called Kos shel Eliyahu? Mishum sheyesh safek, because we have this doubt b'shtiat Kos Chamishi Eliyahu yivarer safek zeh. Rav Menachem Kasher says, because this cup we don't know what to do, it's safek, and safek is something we attribute to Eliyahu, we call it the Kos shel Eliyahu. And then he goes on to say in source 31, some people drink that Kos Eliyahu as the 5th cup. Okay, so it's kind of unclear what's happening here. If we look at the Talmud Yerushalmi, it's a little bit clearer. In verse 32, Minayin la'arba'a kosot, the Gemara asks there, why do we have 4 cups? Rabbi Yochanan b'shem Rabbi Benaya, kineged arba geulot. And now you've all heard this before. There are 4 languages of redemption. L'chein emor l'bnei Yisrael, ani Hashem v'hotzeti etchem v'lakachti etchem, v'hotzeti v'yitzalti v'ga'alti v'lakachti is 4 languages of Geulah. And wine is a symbol of a free man, so redemption is represented by wine, and many cups of wine is certainly a sign of a free man. But if we look in the Psukim, in source 33, we see that there is a 5th term. So we see, I have taken you out from the suffering in Mitzrayim, and I saved you from the work. I redeemed you with an outstretched arm and with great miracles. And I took you to be my nation. And I became your God. And you know that I am your God who brought you out from the suffering in Mitzrayim. Now, interestingly, next pasuk, and then I will bring you to the land where I promised to the forefathers and all of that. Now the question is, the Talmud Yerushalmi brings 4 of the terms, and it doesn't bring the Veheveti. And the Or HaChaim explains that if you read the Psukim carefully, that's because the 5th term is a clause, and the precondition for fulfilling the Heveti, and I will bring you to the land, is v'yedatem, that you should know that I am God. In other words, our actions will determine whether the Heveti part will happen. The first 4 are part of God's promise to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. God was going to redeem us, and he did. And the 5th term depends on our willingness to accept and obey God's commandments. So that one is not a given. It's dependent, and therefore it stands apart from the other 4. So if we see that the 5th cup, the Heveti Etzchem El Haaretz, that really symbolizes the true redemption of the Jewish people. And we know that Eliyahu is the one who's going to herald the true redemption. So if we're going to get to the stage of the Heveti, we're going to first see Eliyahu. So the cup, the fifth cup, is the cup of the Heveti. It's the cup of Geulah, true Geulah, because the physical Geulah we got through the first four cups, but the spiritual Geulah, which is the true Geulah, we are only going to get if we're worthy of it, and it will be brought by Eliyahu. And so therefore, we call that cup in Eliyahu's name. So if you look in verse 35, the fifth expression, it's symbolized by a fifth cup, which is not drunk, because during Israel's long centuries of exile, the people looked upon it as a promise that still needed fulfillment. However, it was set on the table and called the cup of Elijah. The prophet Eliyahu, according to the tradition, is the forerunner of the Mashiach, whose coming symbolizes the ingathering of the exiles and the reestablishment of Jewish sovereignty over Israel. Hence, the promise of being brought into the land of the forefathers is associated with Eliyahu. Many Jews in Israel have been inclined toward adopting the view of many early and later authorities that calls for drinking not 4, but 5 cups of wine. And Rav Goren himself came out and said that in modern day Israel, we should be drinking all 5 cups because we have witnessed the Heveti, and if we don't, we're not showing our gratitude for what we have achieved. Okay, so we started today with 2 very different images of Eliyahu Hanavi, the zealous avenger of the Tanakh and the defender of the poor and unfortunate. And then we saw how Eliyahu's tactic as a Navi was rejected by God, and and that was the transition between those 2 characters, from the too zealous and not defending the people to the one who was always on the side of the people and always there to help the people. And he's given that role as a unifier and pacifier so as to compensate for what his role was in Tanakh. We saw that opening the door for Eliyahu can be derived from the fact that it's the Leil Shimurim, the night of protection and the night of redemption. The door is opened at the beginning of the second half of the Seder as we transition to talking about Egypt to talking about the final redemption. And historically, we saw that the tefillah that was inserted there of Shvol Chamatcha has to do with the Middle Ages and the what was going on historically at that time. And we saw that the whole idea of opening the door really doesn't belong in this place. It belongs at the beginning, based on the Gemara way back when, and it should have been happening at Kol Dichve. And we saw that the 5th cup of the Seder is a halachic discussion based on the text relating to Exodus, the 4 terms of redemption, and the 5th the 5th term, which is dependent, and this tied into Eliyahu in 2 ways, right? One, because he's the one who will resolve all halachic debates, and the other because he's the harbinger of all of the ultimate redemption. And the 5th term is the one that deals with the ultimate redemption of entering the land, the Heveti. And this is the halachic debate, whether to pour it or to actually drink it. It depends really on your belief in what the state of Israel represents, and if it's the beginning of the fulfillment of that 5th step. So I highly recommend that you drink a 5th cup at your Seder. And I'd like to end with the tefillah that the Maharal wrote to say at the time they opened the door for Eliyahu, something a little before the Shvol Chamatcha in source 36. הרחמן ישלח לנו במהרה את אליהו הנביא סחורלתו ויבשר לנו בשורות טובות, ישועות ונחמות. God should send us Eliyahu soon to bring us good news and salvation and comfort, just like it says, the psukim we read, הנה אנוכי שולח לכם את אליה הנביא לפני בוא יום השם הגדול והנורא, והשיב לב אבות הבנים ולב בנים על אבותם. And this time that we really do feel somehow that the end of the world is near. It's good to remember that Eliyahu is going to come and comfort us and bring us to that ultimate redemption. חג כשר שמח. Okay, I don't know how to get bye everybody. We end this meeting.